Morning, Dan. Morning, Wanda. Allison, Jim needs some
Good
help.
morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Planning and Development Committee meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay. In recognition of June as Indigenous History Month, and with this upcoming Saturday, June 21st, being Indigenous Peoples' Day, Severn Council wishes to commence our meeting today with a land acknowledgement to honor the connection between the Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather and on which the Township of Severn operates is part of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. For thousands of years, Indigenous people have been inhabiting and caring for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Ojibwe or Chippewas people. This territory is covered by Lake Simcoe Treaty 16 and the J. Collins land purchase. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. National Indigenous Peoples' Day is celebrated on the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. For countless generations, numerous First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities have commemorated their cultures, languages, and tradition during this season. The summer solstice carries spiritual and cultural importance for many Indigenous peoples, symbolizing a period of renewal, connection, and celebration. Council is committed to acknowledging these significant days and to engaging in the learning, listening, and fostering respectful and honest relationships with Indigenous peoples. We invite our team and community to participate and celebrate June 21st by attending a local event or by engaging in discussions with friends and family. Additionally, you can cycle, walk, or ride along the Utah Trail while listening to the Utah Trail audio app, which highlights some of the vital Indigenous history of Coldwater. Alternatively, you can visit the Coldwater Mill to delve into local history and explore the Indigenous Art Gallery located on the second floor. Thank you, and we wish a happy Indigenous Peoples' Day to our community, our neighbors, and to all of Canada. Welcome and good morning. Today there is one public meeting regarding a proposed development application in accordance with the Planning Act. I'm pleased to advise that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meeting was sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property. Signage was also posted on the subject property to provide information about the application. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for a statutory public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose of the meeting is to inform and provide the public and the Planning and Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of the public meeting will be as follows. First, the applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the application. Second, township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant and/or their agent. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. Excuse me. Lastly, members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting, the applicant, their agent, and if required, township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today at the public meeting on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including questions and comments submitted by the members of the public and committee, will assist the township to determine next steps. The township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, for which this committee may recommend the bylaw to be considered by council or ask for additional information prior to council's consideration. If in the future township council decides in favor of the application by adopting the recommendations from this committee, members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decisions may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meeting in person or by YouTube, Zoom, or telephone may email or call the township's planning department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision on the application. Public meeting for 3332 Muskoka Street zoning bylaw amendment application. I will now call on the applicant's agent, Victoria Lemieux, from Morgan Planning and Development to please present the information provided within item C 1.3.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of the application. Welcome, Victoria.
Slides for me? Okay, perfect. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of committee. Good morning as well to members of the public who may be watching. For those who don't recognize me, my name is Victoria Lemieux. I'm an associate planner with Morgan Planning and Development. I'm here this morning on behalf of the owners of 3332 Muskoka Street within the Washago community. Next slide, please. So the property is located along the west side of Muskoka Street, just north of that main commercial hub of course, of the Washago community that you can see here on the map. And for those familiar with the area, the property is surrounded by low density residential existing built form. Next slide, please. So the property currently has a lot frontage of 20.1 meters and a lot area of just over 1,000 square meters. The property is, of course, currently serviced by municipal water and sanitary. The current property owners purchased the property committee back in November of 2024. And it is our understanding that the last church and community events that were held at this property were approximately between 2021 and 2022, prior to the purchase or prior to the sale of the lands, pardon me. And of course, again, for those familiar, this property historically was considered the Heritage United Church and Community Center. Next slide, please. So here we have an aerial image of the subject property and the existing development. Again, as you can see, the portion of the building closest to the street is the historical church portion of the building. The area to the rear with the red dot on that, that was later added as a community center portion of the building. The property has an existing access driveway, as you can see along the north portion of the property into the rear parking area. Next slide, please. So the application in front of committee for discussion this morning is with an intent to rezone the lands from its current institutional zone to a residential multiple one exception zone. So the intent of this is to essentially allow for the conversion of this building into up to 5 residential units. So as part of this application, again, considering that this is a longstanding currently developed site, a lot of these provisions are recognizing the existing condition of the site. So it would include recognizing that existing lot area, that existing lot frontage of 20 meters, recognizing the existing front yard setback to the front of the church structure, recognizing a side yard setback of 0.7 meters, which is just in the southwest portion of that existing building, towards the southern property line, requesting a maximum density of 49.8 units per hectare, a minimum landscaped open space of 14%, again, recognizing that the parking area to the rear takes up a majority of that space, and recognizing the existing driveway width of 5 meters where 6 meters is required. Next slide, please. So overall, committee, I think our application is quite straightforward in the sense that the intent of this application, again, is to convert this existing structure, as it is, of course, no longer used for institutional purposes, into future residential units. The owners intend to maintain the front portion of the building, being the historical church portion, and wish to invest in doing their best to refinish this portion of the building to its original form. For example, replacing the existing siding with the historical board and batten style of siding, replacing the stained glass windows to emulate what the previous design looked like. And they're able to do that by some historical photography and, of course, just information as community members that they have. So to reiterate, the rear portion of the building, so that community center portion of the building, is intended to be rebuilt within the same footprint, but to be rebuilt. And the reason for that, committee, of course, is number one, to be able to bring it up to building and fire code standards. And the state of the building, it's likely better for them to take down and start over. This would also allow them to obtain a little bit better of a interior wall height for those units in the future. Next slide, please. So here we have an excerpt from our site plan sketch that we provided as part of our application. So again, as you can see, when we look at this sketch compared to the existing aerial imagery, I'll call it the externals of the site really are intended to remain the same, except for the rear portion to be torn down and rebuilt. Again, to reiterate, the front church facade is intended to be maintained. This will, maintain that existing character of the area for the surrounding neighborhood, of course, as well, which is very much an important piece to the property owners to be able to maintain as community members. The rear area for parking does provide the minimum required 8 spaces in order to support the proposed 5 units. So we are maintaining the required parking areas. As well, in the front, you'll see, it's a bit hard to see on the screen, but we are also including an accessible parking space at the front of the property. There is an existing rear shed behind the church that committee members or members of the public may be familiar with, that will be taken down through this process, of course, to ensure that the entirety of that parking area is utilized. Next slide, please. So here we have a elevation sketch of what the owners intend for the development to look like. Again, as you can see, the front historical church portion will be essentially maintained in its current state, albeit, of course, improved from its current state for those who have attended the site in recent years. And of course, again, to the rear, that portion of the building will be removed and rebuilt, but again, to a similar size and scale that currently exists, but of course, providing external access into the units for the upper floor. Next slide, please. So we provided some preliminary floor plans as well for township staff and the peer reviewers to review, and as part of this application for them to consider and comment on. So as you can see, the front portion, the historical church, will essentially be a 2-bedroom loft style of unit. So that will be one enclosed unit itself. And then the rear portion of the building that is intended to be rebuilt will provide 4 1-bedroom units. That's the intent at this stage. Next slide, please. So for the committee's understanding, the property is currently designated settlement living in your official plan and is, as I mentioned, currently zoned institutional in the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So as always, our office provided as well a planning justification report in support of the application that considered all of the applicable policies at the provincial, county, and township level. We see this as a really exciting opportunity for the township to have a underutilized space that's no longer used in its current state to be repurposed for residential use. This will provide some additional unit types and sizes into the community. Next slide, please. So overall, committee, again, thank you for your time today. The intent behind this meeting, also for members of the public who may be listening, is for us to be able to obtain feedback from neighboring property owners and from committee members, of course, on the proposed intent for this residential conversion. We look forward to any comments and questions you might have. And again, just to reiterate, for those who are potentially wanting to comment on this application, we want to reiterate that it is the owner's intent to retain as much of the historical value of this community church as they can, while also making the property much better utilized for the community's overall benefit. And in final comments, Chair, just to reiterate, we also did provide a functional servicing brief as well as a phase 1 environmental site assessment as part of our application, as per the requirements from township staff. So we look forward to your comments, and we will continue to work with township staff before this comes back for consideration. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Does the township's planner, Brad Oster, have anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. I will be pretty brief in my comments as Ms. Lemieux has covered the purpose and effect of the application well. Just as a reminder, this application does propose to rezone the lands to a site-specific RM1 zone to facilitate the redevelopment of the lands, including the retention of the existing main church building, together with demolishing the rear hall and constructing a 2-story addition accommodating a total of 5 dwelling units. The lands are serviced by municipal water and sewer services, and there have been a number of professional reports and studies that were submitted as part of the complete application, which are under peer review at the applicant's expense at this time. Township staff are aware of a plaque being located on the side of the church identifying a rough-hewn stone that was laid by the Governor General in 1874 and was reset during repairs in 2003. Staff are reviewing the cultural heritage policies of the township's official plan and the applicable provincial legislation in consideration of the proposed development. And just as a reminder, this is a public meeting just to receive comments from members of the public, agencies, township departments, and the committee with respect to the application, and a future recommendation report will be brought to council to summarize the response to all of the comments received, as well as include a policy analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Any persons present in person, on Zoom, or the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Township staff will call upon each registered participant. For those in remote attendance, unmute yourself when called upon. Turn on your camera if you wish. All will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. Brad, are there any members of the public registered to speak?
Thank you, Chair. There were no parties registered to speak at today's meeting.
Thank you. If there are any members of the public who did not get called and would like to speak, please unmute yourself now, or for those in person, please approach the microphone and give your name and address for the minutes. Okay, thank you. Could the township's planner please summarize any additional correspondence that has been submitted on this application and provide any further information?
Through the chair, there was one piece of additional correspondence received for this application from Chris and Anika Wilks. They were writing in opposition to the application, citing concerns related to neighborhood character, infrastructure capacity, heritage and cultural value, the loss of public space, density, traffic and parking, property values, and generally with consultation.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant's agent wish to provide any further information on the application or in response to the correspondence? Thanks, Victoria. Do the members of the committee have any comments?
Thank you, Chair. Good report, Vicky. It's pretty concise, lays it out what the new owners wish to do. I wondered if it's needful to keep the, maybe this would go to our friend Brad, is it needful to keep the front facade of the church as it is? Is that, or is that the owner's desire to keep it that way? Is it necessary to do that?
Through the chair, if I may. The township staff, we are currently reviewing the cultural heritage policies, so the need to retain those features is something that we're currently exploring in accordance with the provincial legislation related to heritage buildings and trying to evaluate that. At this time, the applicant has willingly designed the proposed development to include the retention of that main church building and only demolishing and reconstructing the rear portion.
Thank you. And a follow-up. It's my opinion, as the councillor for the area, I feel that that's probably the highest and best use for that property. It's needful that we have more apartments of residential, etc., added to the village of Washago, and I'm in support of the application.
Thank you very much. Member Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair, I support this application as well as what the member McIntyre said. But my question is with sewage, how much capacity do we have? I know it's close with Washago, and I just want to know how that is addressed.
Through the chair to member Taylor, the applicants did provide a servicing brief with the application, which evaluated the capacity of the existing system, as well as considering the demand or the portion of that used and occupied by the church compared to the conversion to 5 residential units. The township's consulting engineer has reviewed the servicing brief in consideration of the uncommitted capacity reports prepared by the Public Works Department, and is confident in saying that there is sufficient capacity to accommodate this proposed development.
Thank you.
Any other members? Member Burkett.
Thank you through Madam Chair. And I just want to say, when we look across our township, across our whole country, what do we do with our old churches that are not being attended anymore? So I think this is great that you've taken a leap to try and provide what is much needed in the community. Homes, apartments for people to live in, but repurposing a church right in our own little hamlet and keeping it is a great idea. So thank you very much.
Any other members of the committee? I have to concur with everyone. Someone could have bought that and plowed it down, and you're going to keep that memory in that church alive. There's many little buildings that people have done that with, so I commend the fact that you have done that. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Motion reads that planning report P25-026 dated June 18th, 2025 with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application file Z2502 for the subject lands located at 3332 Muskoka Street be received as information.
I forgot to close the public meeting. It's closed. Moving to seconder, please. Moved by member McIntyre, seconded by member Taylor. All in favor? Karie, sorry.
Chair, thank you.
Madam Clerk, sorry.
Thank you. So just for committee's reference, we are going to, if with committee's indulgence, we'd like to shift item D 2.1 to become G2. So it's actually considered under reports from staff, because this is like a staff side consultant coming, and it was slid into the public delegation side rather than the staff presentation side. So, and we'll note that change when we get to adoption.
So we'll do the consent agenda now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have anything that they would like to comment on or pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none, thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items as circulated, and that item D.1 move to G2.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by member Brennan, seconded by member Minnings. All in favor? Carried. Reports for officials for direction. G1, request planning report number P25027, request for extension of draft plan of subdivision approval, 3185 Riverdale Drive. Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a request from Morgan Planning and Development on behalf of the landowner for another 3-year extension to the subdivision approval. And from an analysis perspective, staff have no concerns. It conforms with the provincial planning statement, the county OP and ROP. So we're recommending the extension. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any members of the committee have any comments or questions? Member McIntyre.
Thank you through the chair. To Andrea, how many extensions have we granted at the moment?
If I may, through you, Madam Chair, this is a historical approval from 2005. So it is quite, it's been a lengthy extension process. However, they have been working to meet current policy, including endangered species as well. So they are up to date with their engineering as well.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Motion reads that planning report P25-027 dated June 18th, 2025, with respect to the draft plan of subdivision for 3185 Riverdale Drive, file number SVT 0402 Riverdale Estates be received, and that the Township of Severn endorse a 3-year extension of the draft plan of subdivision approval, which is scheduled to lapse on September 22nd, 2025, and further that the County of Simcoe be advised of the Township's position on the extension in writing.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Moved by member McIntyre, second by member Taylor. All in favor? Carried. G2, Karie Warnar, Avail Consulting Community Safety Wellbeing Plan. Welcome.
So good morning. Great to be in council in the morning. Usually I'm doing these in the evening, so it's nice to be fresh. So thank you very much. Oh, there's my phone. And thank you for the invitation. My name is Karie Warnar, and I'm the consultant that has supported your community with the refresh of your community safety and well-being plan. And thank you to CAO Kennard for the invitation as well today. So I guess we'll just say next slide with that. So we'll take a few moments to, familiarize the council. I'm sure you're familiar with the legislation, but just kind of why we're doing this planning, why we're doing it now, and why I'm here today to present this to you. Just a little bit about the importance and the rationale behind the planning, a little bit around how the plan was informed, the areas of risk that the plan will be looking at, the strategies or the actions that will be taken, and then how we will actually monitor and action those. And that's really important because we have a lot of lessons learned from the last round of the plans, and then propose next steps. So next slide, please. So a little bit about legislation and framework. So we know that there is a legislative obligation to develop and adopt and implement these plans. As you can see there, referencing the legislation. But I think more importantly, beyond the legislation, when you look at what's in these plans and the areas of risk, and they're very, very socially complex, social conditions, and they're very interconnected. So you could do an entire plan on mental health. You could do a whole plan on housing. But when you look at community safety and well-being, bringing all those different areas of risk together in a kind of collaborative intersectoral way, it gets a little, sticky at times. And so having a very clear plan that the community can get behind and your community partners can get behind and all kind of be rowing in the same direction is really, really important. So to do that, the government has set up a framework for us, and that bullseye is lifted right from the framework. And it's basically asking us, when we're considering these plans and looking at these areas of risk, to look across these 4 different domains. So looking at the crisis response, so that kind of, you think of police and emergency services, and that's kind of, they live in that world. And then just outside of that is intervention. So that's just beyond that acute risk, but more of an elevated risk. And then to prevention, I think of public health when I think of prevention. And then social development. Social development is really where we'd love to spend most of our time, because the more work you do in the green and the blue, the smaller those other domains become, because you're getting people a little bit more upstream. And that's really the point of this planning, is to be working across sectors to address issues early and trying to change the trajectory for people in community who might be kind of tipping into these areas of crisis. So the role of the municipality in this and the legislation is to prepare and adopt these plans, but recognizing that it's beyond the municipality to be able to deliver on these plans. You need those community providers and partners to be able to do this work. This is the work that they do, but the plan brings them together under some common strategies. So I'm here today because originally these plans were due in 2021, and your community was successful in getting your plan in on time. Not every community was successful in the province of Ontario getting their plan in on time, so that's great. And then in the legislation, it says that we will review and revise as needed every 4 years. And so last time was the first plans that ever were published. And there's been, like I say, a ton of lessons learned about what works, and all equally as important, what doesn't work when you're trying to develop and deliver on these plans. And so in looking at the review of the plan, there was definitely the need to kind of revisit that and start a refresh. And I think you're going to see that pretty consistent right across the province. Next slide, please. So how this plan was informed, so it was kind of 3 different phases. There was a documentation and a data review. So when we're talking about documentation, it's looking at, some of those planning tables, whether it be mental health and addiction or poverty reduction task group or Ontario health teams and their mandates. So basically looking at the mandates across different sectors around the work that they are kind of commissioned to do and the work that they're undertaking, and then a data review. So we re-looked at the original indicators that we use to kind of, do a little bit of a test of like the health of the community, whether that be police data or 211 data or StatsCan data or public health data. I'm trying to think of other data that might have been included in that. We reviewed that, and we looked at, okay, where were we in 2021? Where are we now? What has changed? We know that the pandemic kind of, if you want to say, concluded in that time. So we know that there's some areas that are remaining areas of risk, and some have really become even more magnified. And I think of mental health and addictions, especially around youth. And so that was done. Then we did some targeted engagement with some key groups of some of those collaborative tables that I mentioned. There was an online survey for residents and for providers, 2 different surveys. And then there was an interactive Kuchiching provider strategy session. So that was looking at your partners that provide service to your residents, bringing them together to talk about these areas of risk and what they felt was needed moving forward. And then there was an in-person countywide provider strategy setting session, because we know that there's some providers that don't just service your community, they serve the entire Simcoe County. So just making sure that we're kind of tackling it from all different angles and looking at, what do we move forward with as far as strategies go. Next slide, please. So the focused areas of risk that were identified, probably not a surprise: housing and homelessness, mental health and addiction, access to services and supports. So these are concerns across all communities to varying degrees, depending on the community, which is more of an issue. And certainly in more rural communities, access to services and supports is a real challenge. And so that's something that we're looking at digging into in this plan. Next slide, please. So taking a few moments, you can see, if I kind of just have you look at the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see that in the plan, there are what we call county-wide strategies and then a local strategy. So county-wide strategies simply means that they're going to appear in all 6 refreshed CSWB plans across Simcoe County. So it's a common strategy, but what it looks like in your community will be different than what it would look like in Barrie, let's say, or in South Simcoe. So even though it says countywide, the local application is going to be unique to Kuchiching. So we can see that there was 3 countywide strategies, and then we can see that there was 1 kind of hyper-local strategy that was identified as being important in your community. So I won't read through that because, you can do that, but really the housing and homelessness one is focusing on referral pathways. So for people who we're trying to prevent them from tipping into homelessness, if they're kind of, marginally housed right now or struggling to pay rent, pay bills, pay utilities, we don't want them to tip into homelessness. And then reduction strategies for those that are already experiencing homelessness. The next one was around mental health and addiction. So that was a very focused strategy around youth. So transitional age youth. So that's youth age 12 to 25. And what the service providers who provide services to youth have really identified is that there is that spot around age 18 where you sometimes move from child and youth services to all of a sudden you're an adult, and it's a very different kind of world of services. And sometimes there's a bit of a gap, or the transition is not as smooth as it could be and people fall off. So they are very, very interested in kind of uniting and looking at all their services and making sure that, you know, being able to identify potentially where those gaps or those bumpy transitions are and making them a little more seamless and smooth. And I think that when you look at that, you're going to see, you know, education improve, you're going to see employment rates improve, because sometimes when youth, you know, leave high school, if they're not going to a job or they're not going to a future employment or education destination, it's a little bit of a missing person kind of thing. So they're looking at tightening that up. And so I think that's a really important strategy for youth. The next one is a countywide strategy, and it's around data. So data is not an area of risk, but it's certainly a priority. And to do this work, clearly evident in the first go round of the plans, we need to have a solid approach to data, because otherwise, how are we really going to be able to track and monitor the success of these plans and the impact of these plans? And the next one is the hyperlocal strategy called Gateways to Mental Health. And that's where your local service providers, your Ontario Health Teams and Waypoint, 211, and looking forward to the coordinated access for mental health, is how do people connect into and know what supports and services are available in your community? And going farther from that is, can they access any of this themselves? Can they self-book? Can they self-refer? That's kind of a progressive. So this group is really looking at tackling that, and they have some very kind of concrete evidence or examples, demonstration projects of how this could potentially happen in your community. So that's actually a very exciting strategy that's only happening in your community, and I think that other communities will be watching for the success of that. Next slide, please. So how this plan will be actioned. So another significant lesson learned is that while everybody was very well intentioned in the first plan, and the providers gave some very valuable input, and they had some very clear ideas of what they thought needed to happen and what they wanted to happen, without the resourcing, without a lead agency, it's off the side of someone's desk. And so sometimes when something's off the side of someone's desk, it's hard to action that. So every strategy in this plan has a lead agency, which is critical, and identified partners, and they will be responsible for coordinating the activities and tracking progress, and then reporting to the designated committee. So the designated committee, who's kind of overseeing this for your community, is the Geographical Municipal Coordinating Committee. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Bit of a mouthful, but that's what it's called. We call it GMCC for short. And so they are the ones who are not doing the heavy work of the implementation, but they are going to be tracking the progress. And the first go round, it was a little tricky because of, you know, not always having that lead agency identified and the measurables and the metrics. But if you look at the structure of this plan, it's pretty tight and pretty clear. And so that will certainly improve. And I can expect that the reports back to council will improve as well. And so it's anticipated that council will receive progress reports annually at a minimum, or more if it's a desire of the council. Next slide, please. So proposed next steps. So pending any edits or amendments, the plan that has been prepared, the 2025 to 2029 Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, would be adopted on or before July 1st, which is then again having met legislation and compliance, and that it should be digitally posted to your website within 30 days of adoption. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Any committee members have any questions or comments? Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you. First, I wanted to thank the County of Simcoe for taking the lead on this, because I can see on council's faces the same face that I think I give Karie sometimes. The legislation requires that lower tiers prepare these plans, but they're upper tier services or they're upper tier partners. So it's not work that we do here. So when the legislation first came out, the I guess collective county CAOs went to the county CAO and said, we have no idea how to do this work. Like, it's just not work that we do. We don't have these partners. We don't know these things. So the county very graciously took on the funding of hiring Karie to do it. And Karie has so much knowledge and so much passion for the topic. I always love to hear her speak, but I often don't understand what she's talking about because it's just not my It's not, it's just not our jurisdiction here. So it's a tough one for councils to get their head around, because when you're listening, you're thinking, I don't know anything about this. I'm sure what she's telling you is good. And it is, she's done some fantastic work, and she knows all the community partners, and she's done a great job, and she has a lot of passion for it. But without her, I don't know how we would have got here, because it's just not an expertise we have at a lower tier. So thanks to the county, and thanks for Karie.
Thank you very much. Member Burkett?
Thank you through Madam Chair, and thank you, Karie, for the presentation. So I noticed on one of the slides, access to services and supports. So is that because we live in a rural municipality, most of Simcoe County, is that how do we get these people to where they need to get the help? Is that part of it?
It is, yes, thank you through the chair. So Mayor, part of it is knowing what's available and where to go. Like if you were to Google mental health right now, there's so much. It's broken up by age, it's broken up by geography, it's broken up by, your qualifications. And how do you navigate that when you're in a crisis? In the survey, one of the questions was, if you or a loved one needed support for housing or mental health or addiction, would you know where to go? And overwhelmingly, the majority of people said no, they would not know where to go. So I think that the access to services and supports is, one, do people know where to go? Two, do we have the right services and supports? Are they accessible? So if there's no connected transportation to get to the services and supports, how do they get to those services and supports? And then are there alternatives? So, this is where the data piece, I'm really, really passionate. It's a good thing you only give me 10 minutes, because honestly, I have to take the rest of the morning talking about this stuff. This is what Lori's talking about. But, when you look at, you need data to be able to help you track, and you need all those partners to contribute to that, because the police have a role in that. They've got kind of hyper-local data. They can keep map things. And you have public health, and you have mental health providers. And so it's when you kind of triangulate that data, you can see, okay, this is the demonstrated need. And this is where we fall short, because we don't have services, or there's a gap. So the access to services and supports are, one, do people know where to get them? Do we have them? Can we make them better? How do people, book into them? Is the capacity great? You can find it. Now we can get you there, but it's a 14-month wait. So it's a kind of a broad title umbrella to kind of unpack all those pieces. And so the hyper-local strategy around mental health and addictions is really going to try and unpack that.
The only reason I brought it up is I have had a couple of friends who lost a young person not knowing that the service was there. And they may have felt, maybe they knew the service was there, maybe they felt ashamed to call. And I don't know how you break that, because it shouldn't be something that you're ashamed of. It affects all of us, like mental illness. And if you look at what's going on in the policing world, they actually have someone, if they get a call that that person shouldn't be in jail, but they take them and get them the help that's needed based on the person that's in the car with them. So I've never tried the 211 service, but pardon me, but how do we convey that to our residents, that it's available? It shouldn't be something you're ashamed of to call if you're struggling, right? It's there to help. And I don't know how you change that mindset, but also the access. Like yesterday, we had a transit meeting at the county, and I hope you're going to weigh in on that survey, because we struggled to figure out how do you provide services. We have none in Severn. I think they come through Coldwater. I think there's a bus. Does the bus come through Coldwater? Like, how do we provide that in the greater scheme of things without a huge cost? Because they're looking at municipalities to provide funding as well, which we haven't got, right?
Through the chair in response. Yes, and so 211, I have a very, very close relationship with 211, simply because 211, you may or may not know, is locally delivered. So the 3-digit dialing number of 211 is divided up between, I think, 4 different providers across Ontario. And the one that does our entire area all the way to Peterborough and out to Goderich is actually in Collingwood. And I speak daily with the executive director, Pam Hillier of 211, and she is very, very invested, and certainly that might be of interest in the future to connect into Pam. But there are some other strategies, and I think this is the power of community safety and wellbeing planning. While you might not see it in your plan, a 211 strategy, I can tell you in some of the other plans, we're actually trialing a strategy with 211 and the police, the local police, which we believe will be scalable very quickly, but we're going to let them work it up. You don't want to have 15 things. That was the problem with the first plan. Too many things in the plan. You want to have really tight strategies that you can focus on and deliver on. And then the other communities can leverage your learning and they can apply it, and you can do the same. So there's a really interesting 211 pilot with the OPP and with South Simcoe Police. It's in 2 different plans. And it's where the officers in their cruisers will be able to make direct referrals to 211 because it addresses some of that stigma piece. So when 211 engages with someone, they don't just deal with whatever issue they're calling in with. They will do an assessment, an intake, these are trained navigators to be able to know how to talk to people in distress or people in need and to tease out what are some of the kind of cofactors around whatever they're calling in for. Is there poverty? Is there food insecurity? Is there potentially, violence in the house? And so I'm very interested in tracking some of these strategies to be able to then apply them to different communities and say, this has been worked up. We've got a great model. Would you be interested in doing this? So addressing stigma, I know that there's a group. And I also want to say that while not everything may be under this plan, there's a lot that's going on in your community that's not referenced in this plan that is community safety and well-being around mental health and addiction and stigma. And so it will weave into the plan over time, but we don't have it in the plan as something that we're going to track and report on, but we're going to pay attention to it and we're going to stay connected to that work. So there's lots of exciting things to come and I look forward to giving an update.
Supplementary, if I may, through you, Madam Chair. So that's interesting. So from its inception to today, do we keep records as to how many people are using the 211 service and what they're actually using it for?
Yeah. So
We do. Okay.
it's probably not
I know that
on-
you can't divulge it, but I'm just curious how much it's grown. Okay.
So through the chair in response, 211 is happy at any time to provide municipalities how many people are calling in from your municipality and what the call types are on. They're not going to give you names, but you just want aggregate data. So you can get that now. And then if you were to do something around like a public awareness campaign, then you could see if there was a difference in the number of calls that came in and the type of calls. So that's available now. And I'm happy to flag it for Pam and maybe she can follow up through CAO Kennard and share that back. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yep, good. Member Minnings, then Member Brennan, then Member Jansen.
Thank you so much through the chair. Hi, Karie. Good to see you again. I had the pleasure of being on the local table for the plan since 2022. So that was really good. And it sort of supports some of the questions that that Member Burkett just had around the different kinds of information that are available in the community, such as policing, who were a member at the table. But one thing I wanted to sort of speak to, Karie, I know in your presentation you profiled youth as an example of one area. And as you know, from the local table, I was there as a seniors representative and delegate with the group I'm running. And I just wanted to let you know that in your plan, couple of your priority items, increased engagement of community groups and residents, in my case, specifically seniors, in local initiatives and networks and awareness, like 211 as a small example of one, and increased awareness, coordination, and access to services for community members and vulnerable groups. So, for example, this Friday, I'm doing a session with seniors in Aurelia, and I just wanted to say that this council provided me with some seed money to start up a similar parallel initiative with seniors here in Severn Township as my personal area of interest through a grant. So although it's not a project of this council, it's to do that and pull information to continue to feedback to make sure that our seniors can give us some lived experience information about transportation, access to services, food, access to food, security, housing, all of that. So I think we're on the right track, and I was really excited to see your presentation come to this agenda. So thank you.
Member Brennan.
Yes, Karie, thank you for presentation. I think one of the things I really like about it it is how data-based your information is. It's refreshing. People actually want to use data these days, I think. It's funny, I was listening to the CBC this morning and I don't know if you heard it, but Pembroke mayor was speaking and it's pretty desperate in that community. And there are other communities like that. Peterborough seems to be in a very similar situation. I'm just trying to figure out how do you measure the success of this legislation? Now, it says you monitor, evaluate, and report. Is there an overall report or advocacy? Where along the planning process would I be able to find a report that says, this is working, this isn't working, this is what we should do?
Through the chair, that's a fair question. In asking Solgen, do you have a framework you want us to work with on reporting on this? They have said at this point, no, they're looking at developing one. I do know that I was actually went to Peterborough and I met with a PhD who runs one of their policing programs out there, and he had some research students who've actually worked up a proposed framework. So while we could develop something locally, I, rely on some of the research experts. And so I'm actually going to get access to that. I think I'll be the first consultant. I think it's probably more of a favor to me at this point. It's nice to have connections to get access to that framework. And I'm going to look at it and see if it makes sense to see if we could track these strategies using that framework. Having done work, kind of provincial work before, so part of my consulting is working on these areas of risk, these kind of social determinants. And so having led the Health Links, I'm not sure if you were familiar with the Health Links when that was an initiative years ago. So when the province rolled out these initiatives, they kind of gave it 3 to 4 years just to see what people did with it. And then over time, they started layering in some more clear expectations. The province was struggling just to get people to make sure they got these plans in. So I think we're getting to that point where we could probably expect to see something from Solgen around like, how are you measuring this? But we're not going to wait on that. So being able to use the data and having a data approach now in the plan, I'm going to be working closely with the County of Simcoe, their business intelligence department. And we're going to be creating, potentially using the framework I get from Trent and something of our own to be able to kind of track this. Because to answer your point, how do you know if you've made a dent in this? Some of the challenge around the data is, if you even look at mental health as one example, if you have CMHA and you have Catholic Family Services or CFS, they actually track things differently, right? They use different software. So it's not an apples to apples. So you're trying to kind of cut through that and have these strategies where you have very clear, indicators that you're looking to, so that you're going to be able to, over time, see if you've made that difference. These are very, very complex. It might only be a 30-page plan, but these are very, very complex sectors, and to bring them together in a plan is actually even more kind of wild. So I think that this next 4 years is going to be very telling for us, and I'm very optimistic, more optimistic kind of than the first 4 years, because we've learned what we missed the mark on. And so to answer your point, I hope to be able to tell you that this was our baseline and this was the intervention, and we saw it increase or decrease by this, to be able to, validate whether we see impact or not. Some of that will be quantitative and some of that will be qualitative data.
Member Jansen.
Thank you. And through the chair, I appreciate putting forward the report. We did receive the full report, which I've skimmed through this morning. I'm just wondering if or how pathways to meaningful employment is considered when we're addressing homelessness and poverty. I know people in the community, I think they call it like invisible homelessness, where they're couch surfing, they can't find a job, especially for young people right now. It's difficult to find employment. That leads to poverty. It leads to homelessness. I'm just wondering if there's any consideration to those pathways to meaningful employment.
Thank you for the question through the chair. So in the original plan, employment was identified. The employment sector, I think that, while they have things moving forward, I think to answer your question more fully is, to be employed, you have to have stability in other areas. You have to be able to, have, positive enough mental health to be able to hold that job. You have to have housing. We hear people who they're experiencing homelessness. They don't even have anywhere to shop. How do they go for interviews? So I think there's a lot of kind of pre-work that needs to be done leading up to the employment piece. And then the meaningful employment piece, I think that through the local table, we have representation from some local organizations like Geologic. And so it is taking their attendance in those meetings and, you know, what they know. It's everybody bringing their knowledge of their sector to like weave it all together to say, okay, well, that's fantastic that you've done this, but how do we get to that point if we don't have this? And so that collaborative table that was struck, and I will say struggled, because there was some, you know, the direction was not always clear and the strategies are not always clear. I think moving forward, when we reconvene that table and having those right representatives, including those employment representatives, and the other sectors that feed into that, to your point around poverty, it's planning together. And so that's something that I think that will have the voice at the table, and that's where you're going to see the difference. Because you can't look at employment in isolation from those other determinants of health. It just doesn't work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting from what Member Burkett said. I kept it. It's a newspaper article, and it's called the Ontario Structured Psychotherapy Program out of Waypoint. And it is for the types of things that he was talking about, plus anybody who has OCD or is having a stressful time in their life. And you go and you can apply to it, and you have 6 free sessions where they will help you. These are the types of things that aren't out there. And that was a fluke that they had it in the Midland Matters paper, or whatever it's called, the Midland Today. And when you were talking about the job, the library, Aurelia Library was here last week, I guess it was, and they have a worker at the library, and she does those types of things. She helps them with jobs and gives them an address so that they can have something to put on their resume and those types of things. It's out there. It's just, when anyone asks me anything, I always say 211, because or if I happen to know something about the county one, I will refer them to there. But that's the problem. The people who are being asked, we all don't have those answers.
Part of the strategy, just to answer your question, part of the strategy, if you look in the hyperlocal strategy, is around looking at a directory. So the last thing we need is another printed version of anything, because as soon as you print it, it's dated. So there has to be something that's living, and if you think of 211, they are, in my opinion, the source of truth for what exists, because everybody has an obligation and responsibility to keep them updated. So I don't want to overcommit to anything here, especially live, but we are looking at something that will take the shape of that so that it'll be a one-stop shop for people to go to. It's like talking about those access points into the system for people to figure out where to go. And I think that the Aurelia example that you gave of the human service coordinator that works out of the Aurelia Library is a great example of, you need sometimes that support, a little bit of that navigation, that light touch coordination. And so that's what you see different organizations moving towards. You hear like navigators popping up everywhere, which is fantastic. But to some extent, you have to pull those navigators together to make sure they're all working from the same source of truth. So that's something we'll tackle.
Thank you very much. And anyone who I've ever recommended 211 has always found they could help or lead them to help. And it's been really good. Thank you. Member Burkett.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. I'm just going to comment. You're doing a great job. You've got some huge challenges. To Member Minning's comments, seniors at home that are alone. I know years ago, I don't know if they're still doing it, but phoning 911 because they wanted a ride in an ambulance just so they had someone to speak to. And to Member Jansen's comments, young people with no home, what incentive have they have to even get out there and get a job? Because it's got to be depressing. So it sends them into a spiral. And like, I'm not sure how we're going to address it, but this is huge, only because of what's happened in our society today and the price of things. Like, I just don't know how we're going to get out of it, but I commend you for what you do. Thank you.
And to that, we did meet Pam at the county. She was with the age-friendly plan, and she spoke, and that is a very good plan that is helping a lot of the seniors.
Social prescribing component that 211 is also supporting, and that's for seniors, exactly the seniors you're talking about that Councilor Minnings is talking about as well. So there's a lot of pieces that you don't see in this plan that are out there, and it's about how do we connect them and help people navigate, and just getting clearer on that, because there's lots out there. It's just accessing it.
And that's what Jane was talking about. They're putting out a seniors calendar, and they're going to have volunteers in each community that tell everybody what activities there are, and they're going to put it out so that. And I was amazed at what someone could do, and a lot of it, someone's online. You can just go online and take a course in Aurelia, or you can take a course here, or meet up with people here, or a coffee time there, or something that's going on. And I was totally amazed at all the different activities there are. And now they're trying to get them out there because on their survey, that's what the seniors said. We don't know what's going on, and how do we find out? So yes, you do have a lot of work, but somebody's coordinating this, it'll work, and you've got the county, so that's excellent. And thank you very much. Motion, please.
Thank you. Motion reads that the community safety wellbeing plan be approved as presented, and further staff be directed to continue to work with the County of Simcoe, the Geographical Municipal Coordinating Committee, the OPP, Couchiching OPP Detachment Board, and other service partners on plan implementation.
Moving to seconder, please. Moved by member Burkett, second by member Brennan. All in favor? Carried. H1, Library Board resignation, Ada Silk. Go ahead.
Ada is my sister, and just for interest, she's enjoyed 30 years on there, and the names that she worked with, and the chair would know, Doug Miller and Dorothy Pheasant. So that's so far back. How many years would Dorothy Pheasant been on the board? But I congratulate her on her retirement.
Yep, she was there in 1994 with Mrs. Burrows too. Yep.
So it's just a motion to accept her resignation and that council extends their thanks for her years of service.
Moving to seconder, please. Moved by member McIntyre, seconded by member Minnie. Oh, she wants a request to speak.
Yes, she does, Chair. Thank you. My question is, now that, for the resignation, is there a letter or something, a certificate, something going out from council officially? I think with the years of service, do we have something that would be done? When you said, council acknowledges our years of service, I just wanted some more information on what that is.
Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. So yes, a letter will go out, given this lovely lady's numerous years of service. We can have that letter done by the mayor if you'd like.
Thank you very much. So moved by, who did I say? No, it was,
Can we add that I went to school with her and I've got some, never mind.
I will leave you to add a couple personal notes on the letter.
we add that I was there with her in 94. So who was the mover? Sorry. Oh, we didn't get there. Okay, moved by member Jansen, seconded by member Minnings. All in favor? Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you want to have a bio break and then do this? Pass the motion and then have a, okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so the motion reads that committee resolve in a closed session that the meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to the Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392 for the purpose of considering advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Moving to seconder. Moved by member Taylor, seconded by member Burkett. All in favor? Carried. So
Okay.
just
so-
quick, oh, no,
No, we're back in open.
I don't know if it has to do with closed. Can I make a comment on your email that you're going to send?
Should we touch base after?
Pardon?
You want to just touch base after?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the motion reads that closed session be adjourned at 11:14 a.m. and that we resume the normal session.
Moved by member Taylor, second by member McIntyre. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you. And then the second motion is that council upholds motion CSC 2023-135 and that correspondence be sent from the township solicitor.
What was that last part?
And that the correspondence be sent from the township solicitor.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought you meant. Okay, moved by Councillor member Brennan, sorry. Member Taylor, all in favor? Carried. Moved by member Burkett. Second by member Jansen, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Coogan.
Thank you.
Thank
It was, wasn't lovely.
Thank you all.
Yep, it was.